Level 1 and level 5 are given to you. Level 1, that influence level is given to you by the organization that you work for. They give you that title. Level 5 is given to you, okay, by the people you have led over the time. Where all of the work has to be done by leaders is to understand, how do I increase my influence with people at level 2, at level 3, and level 4. So how do we connect? How do we produce? And then how do I reproduce and develop those people? When you do that, you'll begin to increase your influence with people inside and outside your organization, right? This is not only what happens inside organizations. This is in everyday life.
Right.
This is at home. This is in our community. This is with volunteers. So this is an influence model that can completely change the way that you not only lead people, but you're perceived as a leader to them.
This podcast is brought to you by Fast Slow Motion, a team of expert consultants that have helped thousands of growing businesses build scalable systems on the Salesforce and HubSpot platforms. To learn more, visit fastslowmotion.com. Welcome to the Fast Slow Motion podcast, where we teach you how to build a business you love while enjoying your life. I'm your host, Sam Donaghey, and joining me today is Fast Slow Motion Strategic Client Director, Michael Johnson. Michael, it's great to see you here today.
Sam, it's amazing to be here.
Absolutely. Today's a really good one. We've got a guest today, Chris Goede. Chris is the Executive Vice President at Maxwell Leadership. Chris has spent decades starting, growing, and leading companies, and now helps organizations around the world apply John Maxwell's principles inside their culture. His work focuses on creating leadership cultures, leading beyond a title, and developing emerging leaders. So today, we're going to dig into his leadership approach, the 5 levels of leadership, and how you can build a stronger bench of leaders inside your business. Chris, welcome to the show.
Sam, so good to be here. I really appreciate it. Michael, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Absolutely. Chris, you've been with John Maxwell on and off for nearly 3 decades, and you now lead the B2B side of Maxwell Leadership. So to start the conversation off, can you tell us what your work with leaders in organizations looks like today?
Yeah, first, let me say this. I started when I was 5. After hearing that introduction, I feel old that I've been around this long, but I have. I've almost been 3 decades with John, and man, what a ride. Just learning from osmosis over the years has been amazing. But my full-time role now is that I take our content, our principles, the things that we've learned, and I help organizations of all sizes understand what it's like to increase your influence, improve the culture, and really, at the end of the day, get to a place to where we're able to work more efficiently and effectively together as a team.
Chris, it's often said that leadership is influence and not really position. And so when you walk into an organization for the first time, what are some of the misunderstandings about influence that you see the most often?
Yeah, this is a great question. I want to back up just a little bit, because as we think about our organization, those that are listening, part of this podcast, and you're thinking about your environment, your organization, the first thing is to remember that the organization itself will never outgrow the capacity or the capability of the leader or the leaders in that organization, right? So that is driven by influence. And so as we look at organizations, we really focus on organizational development, the culture, the leadership. What is the common language of leadership inside that organization? And most of them, to your point, could not say, well, it's really about influence. Because what do we do is, as human beings, the first thing we do when we get an opportunity to either start our own business, we get an opportunity to partner with somebody, we get an opportunity for a promotion, we go, man, we got to start producing. Like, we got to go right to it, right? We got to get results. We've got to have our KPIs. We got to make sure we're driving revenue. We got to make sure we save costs. And so we naturally just immediately go right after that. And we forget that none of that happens without people. And the only way to truly understand how to lead people effectively with the right motive is to understand what it is to truly influence people. So I see a lot of doers when I go into organizations, but what ends up happening is we see a fallout from that, because people are so focused on the production side of things, which is great. We got to do that. We'll talk a little bit about that. But it starts with truly understanding how to connect and relate to people to start building your influence.
Gotcha. So there's a balance between production and influence that companies have to figure out in order to really do this great.
Yeah.
just a follow-up question on that. You talked about leaders, the organization only growing or only being as good as the leader's capability. And that's reminds me of the concept of the lid, you
Yep.
know? And so how do you identify when a leader in the building has maybe hit their ceiling, or it maybe is worse, like toxic to the culture? Like, how do you identify that?
Yeah, this is a great question. So if you've ever seen John Maxwell teach the law of the lid, and if you haven't, I just Google it and go out there. There's videos of him teaching it. And when he teaches it, he sits here and he does this the whole time he's teaching it. Now listen, Sam and Mike, I don't know about you guys, but I sometimes have a hard time staying focused. And so I used to say to him, man, why are you doing this while you're teaching? And he's like, Chris, young whippersnapper, he said, you don't understand. They'll never remember what I'm going to say, but they'll always remember this visual. And now no matter where we're at in the world, whether they speak English or not, or whatnot, if anybody understands the concept of law of lid, they just look at me and start doing this. And I'm like, well, that's why he's written 35 million copies of books, right? And he still
got it
signs
figured
my
out.
paycheck. Yeah. But what ends up happening, it's a great question, because what ends up happening is you see leaders begin to lose their team. They begin to lose their people. They begin to lose their vendors, their partners. They begin to slowly leak the talent out the back door, or the opportunities out the back door, because as leaders, if we're not continually really focusing on raising our lid, those that are around us, when their lid gets higher than ours, they're out. They're out in a heartbeat. And so I tell leaders all the time, you know, you get an opportunity to grow your business, your team, you get an open, rec to hire somebody. And let's say we're all humble leaders here, and on a scale of 1 to 10, we go, man, you know what? I'm probably a 6. I got some room to grow. But you have an open rec, and you're like, I'm going after an 8, 9, or a 10 to join my team. Like, I'm going after a rock star. And if you sell them to join your team, and I strategically use the word sell because it will be a sales job, they're not staying. They're not staying. Because as soon as they begin to see that they're outpacing their leader, their vendor, their partner, whatever it might be, they're going to find a greener pasture. And so you'll begin to see things like the turnover of that leader that keeps going up. There seems to be a repetitive problem. They can't keep certain vendors or partners or processes in place. And it's solely because the leader is not challenging him or herself to grow at the pace at which the business is asking for them to grow.
Wow. Ton of wisdom there. Cautionary tale. And, I think for maybe some folks, it might be the first time hearing this concept of leaders kind of progressing and, this concept of maybe the 5 levels of leadership. And so maybe if it is their first time, listeners' first time, could you walk us through the 5 levels of leadership and why you say maybe the real transformation happens in levels 2, 3, and 4?
Yeah. Great question. So this is a methodology that John developed. Boy, I think it was probably 25, 26 years ago. It was the first chapter of a book that he wrote called Developing the Leader Within You. And the first chapter really talked about what is influence. And so he developed this model called the 5 levels of influence, now called the 5 levels of leadership. And I'm going to walk you through it really quick, and then I'm going to answer your question. And I'll give you some overall thoughts that I think are super important for those that are with us today that are listening or watching us, because it seems simple and it's going to seem like it's a stair step, but it's pretty complex. It's actually a methodology that really changes the leadership structure and the culture of organizations, no matter the industry, no matter the size, around the world. John says you have level 1 influence with people when you have a title. He calls this positional influence, okay? This is, to have some fun with this really quick, this is the because I said so. I don't know how many parents are listening right now, but how many of you, before you had kids, you said, I will never say because I said so to my kid? I know I said that.
Yeah.
And I think 3 weeks into my oldest being born, I already started using it, right? It's like, it's this command and control. Now, there's a lot of positive things to each level. There's a lot of negative things to each level. So I'm having fun here for just a minute, but really, this is where people are following you because your influence with them is simply because of the title on the shirt. Now, think about the lack of engagement in our teams and our organizations right now. I think the last poll I saw was, around 32% engagement level in organizations.
Wow.
Why is that? That's because most leaders are leading from level 1. It is because I said so, command and control. Level 2, John says you then increase your influence to level 2 influence when you connect with them or you relate with them. And here the key thing is that people begin to follow you because they want to. This is where discretionary effort comes in. This is where you're getting a little bit more from the team than just punching in and punching out, right? They're doing more than the bare minimum to get their paycheck on Friday or whatever it is that their goal is. It's the bare minimum. Then you increase your influence with them to level 3 influence, which we call this the production level. This is where not only yourself as a leader, but also in and through team, you are producing for the organization. People are looking at that leader, that team, that company, that entrepreneur, and they're saying, man, they are getting it done, both personally and professionally. The balance, to be able to balance both, right? Then you gain level 4 influence when you begin to develop them as leaders, when you begin to reproduce what you know in them so that they can then do what you've been doing. And all of a sudden you've learned skills and you become more competent in certain areas because of that leader. And they look at you and they say, hey, man, he has level 4 influence with me because. And then finally, the pinnacle level, John calls this the ultimate respect, kind of the ultimate leadership level. And this is where you have led someone so well for so long that they look at you as a level 5 leader. Now, I was with an organization yesterday and we were talking about Jim Collins, who's a good friend of John's. We were talking about the book, Good to Great. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about, in there, he talks about level 5 leaders and organizations. And what the great thing about that is that, man, Jim did tons and tons of work on organizations, studying great organizations, where John and our organization, we've done a ton of work on studying great leaders and great leadership. And what does that look like? And so this methodology of the 5 levels is the how behind level 5 organizations, right? Yeah. This is how you go about becoming a level 5 leader. Now, let me say this, a couple really important things to understand about this model with the limited time that we have here. Number one is that you're on different levels with different people all the time.
Interesting.
Yeah. So leaders, you're going, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like I got to know where I'm at with Sam and where I'm at with Michael. And
interesting. Wow.
We are. And the key is we got to lead them the way that we have influence. We got to lead them at the level that we have influence with them.
So it starts again and repeats every time you hire a new person, right?
100%, Sam. So for example, I've been with John, like we talked about, for a long time. I would hope that there's some people in our organization that I have level 4 influence with. But if I hire a new team member tomorrow, it doesn't matter my tenure, my title, it doesn't matter how long I've known or been with John. I have level 1 influence with him or her.
Yeah.
And I got to start that process. So
I'd imagine reputation speaks for itself as well, right? Within the organization, because people speak to each other.
But it does. Reputation's great. But when you're leading somebody or influence, the proof's in the pudding. It's like, how are you leading me? I love the reputation. Yes. You have a leadership brand because how people expect you to show up based off your title and how you actually show up is actually your leadership brand. And so you've got to lead all them individually, which it's tough, right?
Pressure.
But you got to understand that. The other thing is, you heard me say just a minute ago, I hope that I have level 4 influence somebody. I meet with a lot of leaders and we talk about this and they go, man, this is amazing. I am a level 5 leader. And I go, hold on a minute. You don't get to determine what level of influence you have with them. They do.
Yeah.
So we've got to go back and we got to let them be able to say, hey man, this is the impact. This is where you're at leading me. We got to be able to hear that and understand that. Now, Michael, really quick to wrap this up, because I'm super passionate about this in organizations. You talked about the key levels at 2, 3, and 4. Uh-huh. Here's the final insight that I'll share with our listeners today. Level 1 and level 5 are given to you. Level 1, that influence level is given to you by the organization that you work for. They give you that title. Level 5 is given to you, by the people you have led over the time. Where all of the work has to be done by leaders is to understand, how do I increase my influence with people at level 2, at level 3, and level 4? So how do we connect? How do we produce? And then how do I reproduce and develop those people? When you do that, you'll begin to increase your influence with people inside and outside your organization, right? This is not only what happens inside organizations. This is in everyday life,
right?
This is at home. This is in our community. This is with volunteers. So this is an influence model that can completely change the way that you not only lead people, but you're perceived as a leader to them.
Love it. Love it. Chris, you also mentioned earlier about common language. So can you tell us how how does the 5 levels model actually create a shared language inside a company, please?
Yeah, this is something that when we took this model years ago and began to organizationalize it into corporate America, one of the things is we had to create a common language of leadership. Mm-hmm. There's two, I'm gonna give you one example and then one main reason. The reason is this, think about this with me real quick. Let's say you have a leadership team of 4 people. And if I were to come in and I said, how do we define leadership here? I may get 4, 5, 6 different answers because some of you would give me 2. And all of them are right because the word leadership is so broad, right? Like there's all kinds of competencies that funnel up to that. What ends up happening though, and the problem, it's almost like a silent killer, is that then those 4 leaders go and lead their verticals inside the organization and they lead their team how they define leadership. They use their language of leadership. And we begin unintentionally to create 3 or 4 different silos or subculture of leadership and culture because the way that we're leading, and we're doing it unintentionally. It's the best that we know how, but there's no common language of this is how we're going to define leadership here inside the organization. The other reason is we decided, man, we've got to have a language for leaders to be able to communicate effectively, efficiently, and not have to worry about maybe being misunderstood in the moment when things are, bullets are flying and we're trying to get things done. So I'll give you a real life example. One of my sales team that I lead, one of my teams I lead is a sales guy, number 1 producer, kills it all the time, highly relational. I can hear him coming down the hall sometimes in the morning, right? He's got the cup of coffee. He just wants to come and sit down and talk. And I'm in here pounding out things and spreadsheets and trying to figure things out. One day I got this call from John, said, hey, I actually need you to change your schedule. I need you to be here tonight, da-da-da-da. Well, if you have a family, you understand that changes a lot of dynamics. All of a sudden, I'm not coming home that night, different things. I got all kinds of stuff on my head. He walks into my office and I said, hey, I got to go level 3 really quick here. This is what happened this morning. That's what I need your help with. Got it? He goes, man, I'm good. No problem. We'll take care of it. We got this. And he went out. Because I said level 3, he knew that I was in production mode immediately versus if he comes in and I don't have that common language of where I'm at that day or what I'm trying to accomplish in that meeting or that, and I just start barking orders at him, he's going to turn around, walk back out, go to the water cooler and be like, don't anybody go by Chris's office today because he is not in a good mood, right? And then all of a sudden what? Engagement goes down. So it's a way for us to be able to communicate. I'll give you one other quick example. Over the last couple of years, I've been asked by John and Mark, our CEO, to lead a couple of different parts of the organization. And one of my founding teams that I have, they're an incredible team. They're a mature team. They're getting it done. Well, I hadn't really connected with them in a while because I'm so focused on the other part of the organization. One of them comes by and says, hey, man, I know you're killing it. We're doing good. Everything's well, but it sure would be good to get some level 2 time anytime you get a chance, maybe go grab a lunch or whatever. So just speaking that language helps us communicate without the emotional weight of what that looks like.
I was thinking that about the emotion. It kind of removes the emotion. Yeah.
Here's one other example. All my Chick-fil-A fans out there. Okay. Now listen, I live in the South. Our corporate headquarters here in Atlanta. I'm a huge Chick-fil-A fan, especially on the road. When my wife's not with me and the Oreo milkshake's available, I'm in, right?
There you go.
Their common language, when you say thank you, is what?
My pleasure.
My pleasure, 100%. Well, we know the Kathy family really well. John's friends with Truett and Dan. And Truett started saying my pleasure in the boardroom about 25 or 30 years ago. And he kept saying it. He kept saying it to his leadership team, kept saying it. And now for me personally, the biggest legacies that he's left in their customer service is now in every store, no matter where you go around the world. When someone says thank you, they say my pleasure. Now, that's their common language, right? Around how they serve people. And by the way, your common language leads to your common beliefs, which leads to your common behavior. And we're in the behavioral change business. So when you say my pleasure, they believe that. And oh, by the way, it comes with a smile. It's not like they say my pleasure and throw the tray at you, right? The behavior follows the common language.
That's right. Attitude follows action in many cases.
100%.
Yeah. And so putting that out there, you set the tone. Leaders can set the tone with a common language. That makes so much sense.
So Chris, when you enter an organization, what signals, whether they be positive or negative, sort of help you assess the health of its leadership culture?
Yeah, it's for us, one of the quick indicators is really their engagement level and the turnover percentage of the business. Now, some industries, they carry a high turnover percentage, right? Retention is low in certain parts of it. You think about some sales positions and specifically we have some clients that are in the automotive industry and those sales, like it's there's industry standards, but our goal is to go in and measure against the industry standards and benchmark a number and begin to help them improve that. And then the engagement level, like do some internal surveys around being able to determine what is the engagement. Are they committed to what they're doing? Are they super engaged? Are they sold out to what the business is doing? Are they behind the purpose of the company? And so when we start asking questions like that, we quickly bring to the surface different leaders, different verticals, different teams that have higher turnover than others. And often it leads directly to the leader of that team. 81%, here's another thought for you. 81% of the people that are engaged, this is a Gallup survey, said that they're engaged because of their direct supervisor.
Okay.
So this is why we have to cascade this. So for example, right, I report to Mark Cole, our CEO, and John Maxwell. My leadership team, their engagement level is on me. And then you look at that all the way down and throughout the organization. And so you can quickly begin to identify where we have some problems in the culture and the leadership in an organization by just looking at those two things.
So it's not necessarily always a bad culture across the business. You've got subcultures within teams.
That is correct.
But you need a unified culture across the board.
That is correct.
Everybody.
Yeah,
that is correct.
In that scenario, Chris, it's really this difference between a have to follow and a want to.
Yes.
And so what's your advice, or do you have any tips for someone that needs to help make that transition from have to want to?
Yeah. So let me go back to level one in this have to. It is not a bad thing. Okay. It's actually a great thing. We've got an opportunity. We've got a promotion. Because by the way, every time you get a promotion, you got to really look at your influence with people and what that does on the news. Just because you've been at the organization for a long time and you got promoted doesn't mean that all of that influence goes with you. So it takes a little bit of work to be able to then increase your influence to go from that have to want to. And John uses this word of relationships is kind of how you move up from 1 to 2. I want to go a step further though, because I want to talk about connecting with your team. If we're being honest, there are people on our team right now that we're like, I have no desire to build a relationship with that person, right? They're extremely good at what they do, but I mean, we are as far opposite as you could actually imagine.
Sam's thinking about me right now.
I was going to say, I sense the tension between the two of you right here.
I've got his video off. It's fine. That's right, Sam.
Yeah.
This is actually going to be an intervention. Sam, you don't know, but Michael told me that we're doing an intervention.
Yeah, it's not even a podcast recording today.
That's right. Yeah. So it's really about how do we connect with people? Well, when you start looking at that and you think about your own journey and you think about the way that you're connected with people, man, there's so many things that connect us with people. Number one, solving problems together, connect with people, right? Understanding their personal values and why what is important to them, that connects with people, right? Asking questions, being curious. Here's another thing about leaders. We do a really good job acting like we're listening to our team when we already know where we're going and what the answer is. Now, we may know that, right? We're the leaders. We got to make that decision, whatever it is. But I think if we would do a better job of being curious, and there's a big difference between listening and being curious. And when you are, people want to be seen, valued, and heard. That's what they want. Okay. They don't want to always be right. They don't want their opinion to always be the direction we go or what we do, but they do want to be seen, valued, and heard. So when you understand what that looks like, and Sam, back to your point where we were talking earlier about how this is different for every single team member you have. I have some dynamics on my team. I was talking this morning to one of my team members and I was saying, hey, well, so-and-so, I literally understand this and I have to lead that person this way. That's different than I lead this person this way. And it's based off of really who they are, how they're wired, what are their learned behaviors, what do they value? And those are ways that I can connect with them and not have to build a relationship, not to have small talk, not have to sit there and act like I'm engaged in the story that they're telling me just because I want to try to build a relationship with. No, we can do it through connecting in a ton of different ways.
Do you find that most businesses that you work with don't have a common value system that they're all pointing towards? Obviously, they've got a common goal, but do they have like a shared value system that they're all aligned to when they get hired?
Yeah, so this is a really good point, and this is a really deep thought and question that we could unpack for a long time. As organizations, again, doesn't matter the size, you know what your kind of true north is and where we're going. Along with that, we have a mission, we have a vision statement, we have our company values, all that's great. However, when it comes to leadership and influence, what is really key here is that every single person on your team, really in your sphere of influence, they actually have different personal values. So one of the organizations that I was with yesterday, I took their leadership team through a values card exercise. And this organization there's 35 executives in the room. And I had people that were there 20 years. And then I had people that were there 2 months across the board. And we were talking about how we all believe in the purpose of the organization. And what was ironic was they didn't really ever think about, okay, we know what the values of the organization, but what are Sam's personal values? What are Michael's personal values? Because that's the key to understanding their and influencing them, right? So we get done, and I was talking to the CEO on my way out, and he goes, man, he said, I've been around this organization a long time. And what we accomplished in the last 30 minutes and because what I did is I had them go through this exercise that came up with their top 5 values. And then I made them get up and all start finding somebody cross-functionally and to share their top 5 values with them. The engagement level in the room, you could just feel the energy just rise. And the CEO is like, it was amazing. Like, we all think about being so organizationally focused on the mission and the values and where we're going. Wow, that's important. And the organizational values are super important. Understanding each other's, man, that's where you put fuel right there on the fire of getting them to produce, to connect, to develop people all around the focus of the organization.
Wow. Chris, I can see one of the challenges, some of the stuff we're talking about, especially with building relationships. And even in some of the examples you gave, a lot of organizations, I mean, including ours, are either remote or hybrid right now. And so I could see that being a challenge to really try to intentionally grow influence and really invest in relationship. What do you see working now out there in the wild for hybrid or remote organizations?
Yeah. On Monday, we hosted our Maxwell Leadership virtual Christmas party.
Wow. Nice.
All right. So I also have the privilege at Maxwell Leadership as the chief culture officer. And if I am not stating it important enough or urgent enough that we've got to figure this out, because this is the way that we are working going forward, right? There is a blend between what we have is kind of a remote, full-time virtual, back and forth. And so after the Christmas party, I had some feels during it, right? I was like, oh, this is a little funky and awkward. This didn't seem like we connected. So I got on the phone. Hey, what did you feel? What was the experience like? It wasn't perfect, but what I found was those that are full-time virtual, maybe, not even the same state, right? We're in Atlanta. We have employees, well, really around the world, but like California. And so what I found was those that are full-time virtual loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it. To be able to see each other, to interact. We broke them out in breakout rooms, right? They got to talk about what their favorite ornament was, like in groups of 5, and we had tons of groups out there. Those that were in the office were like, I mean, I might not ever get that 60 or 90 minutes back in my life, right? Like, I mean, it's just, so there's no perfect answer. Here's what I will say though. I'll give you a couple examples of how I've seen leaders really try to do this well. To their remote team, they'll say, hey, know that I'm going to have my Zoom up from 3 to 4 today. I'm going to be at my desk working. If there's something that comes up, you want to pop by my office, just pop in there to say, hey, Chris, and I got a question for you, right? Like, they make them accessible virtually without it being around a structured meeting. Now, you have your structured meeting and your virtual meetings and you keep them engaged, but there are also times where you just have to have that open door policy. Like if they were in my office today, they can just walk by, knock on the door, come in and connect and get a question answered. And so I've seen leaders try to do that. The other thing is be very intentional about when you understand your team, even if they're virtual, to continue to add value to them, even if it's through the mail, even if it's through a gift card, even if it's through a text, like you got to get creative, right? And I tell leaders all the time, listen, if you're really good at that and you're really strong at that, awesome. If you're not, what I need you to do is put a process in place to be able to do that, because this is the way this is our new normal. This is the way it's going to happen. And we need to be able to lead and influence properly, both those that are in our office and those that are in the virtual world.
Chris, can we back up just a little bit to what you mentioned earlier when you were talking about level 2 leadership, level 1 leadership, and how you have to effectively continue to repeat that, right, as a leader? I don't think we covered anything like practical in the day-to-day for a leader who might be stretched thin. So like for anybody that might be listening at home, do you have any practical tips for how to, what does that look like?
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that we really focus on is how do we help leaders increase their influence with people in the process of doing what they do. The last thing that we want is another to-do list as a leader. Now, we've got to understand our people. Okay. We got to understand what feeds them and what wires them. But once you get past that, then it's part of what you're doing. So I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example both at level 2 and level 4. Okay. So at level 2, when you think about the power of questions, John wrote a book called Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. It's a great book about different types of questions. Instead of when they come into your office, okay, and you go straight to it, man, maybe just take 3 or 5 minutes and ask 2 questions, okay? Or when you close the meeting, come up with some creative questions. I have a team member of mine at the end of our time together on my one-on-one, I ask this question. Hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, with no 7s, because 7s are like Switzerland. Okay. Leaders,
sitting on the
don't
fence.
give your people options at 7, right? Because if 7's the easy way out. So I'll say to her, hey, when we were talking about this podcast that we were going to do together, on a scale of 1 to 10, no 7s, how do you feel about where you're at? How do you feel about what we talked about? And then she'll sit back. If she says 6, then I go, stay right here. We got some more to talk about. If she says 8 or above, now that's a simple little production question, but it's also a question, me asking her, where is she at? Like, are we aligned? Like, what does she think? Remember I said seen, valued, and heard? Yeah. Think about that. She felt in that moment, she felt heard. She felt her opinion was valuable to me. It was. She felt seen, right? And so we think about what that looks like. So make it part of your meetings. Yeah. One of the things I do in our team meetings, I meet with all my teams every Monday morning. The first 10 minutes or 5 or 10 minutes are my time. And I use it for 2 reasons. Number one, I think leaders should always be learning. I think the leader should be setting the example. And so I just share very vulnerably, transparently, things I'm learning, either through mistakes the previous week, maybe it's something content I'm digging into, because leadership is contagious. So I'm trying to set that example. The second thing is I'll use that time to go around and be like, hey, man, I want to know the number one personal highlight from all of you over the weekend. What was it? You have 30 seconds. Now I don't need a whole book about it, right? And we all have some of those on our team. And then I have some that I have to pull it out of. But just some quick, personal, that draws the team and connections together. When it comes to developing people, let me give you another example real quick of kind of building it into what you do. We're big believers that you should have a succession plan in place for every position in your organization as a leader from top down. A lot of people think about succession planning at the top, founders, executives, right? But we really should put something in place where every single leader in the organization has a plan for who's next in their role, who's up. Well, one of the things we tell leaders all the time is you are already in meetings, you're already going lunch appointments, you're making trips, you're all these different things. Why are you doing it by yourself? Who's your number 2? Mm-hmm. Bring them with you. Because what ends up happening is then organically you begin to coach and develop. They begin to ask questions. And we're saying, no, we don't want you to spend a ton of time separate from what you're already doing. Make them a part of it. And we think too much of it being separate.
Chris, one thing that I think maybe people are wondering is that concept of let's say we are doing succession planning, or we're trying to identify who is that second person, that next person up, the person on deck. Yeah, absolutely. How do we find, or how can you tell someone has leadership potential, even if they don't have the title? What are we looking for?
So this is a personal opinion on kind of what I look for, what I see in leaders. A couple of things come to mind. The first one is, are they consistently performing at what their current job is? The greatest thing you can do as an individual contributor, as an up-and-coming leader, the greatest thing you can do is to do your job really well for your leader. Do your job really. So are they consistently performing is one thing I look at. Another thing is, do they create energy around the ideas and the things we're working on, or are they just completing the task, right? Yeah. Is it just a text box? They just checking the box, or are they creating energy around that project, that task, that skill set? And then I think finally, this is super important, is and all of us that are listening and participating right now, we're going to think about somebody when I give you this example. We all know people that don't have very good self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about a couple people right now, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think intuitively we can see that. So I look for people to demonstrate, even early in their career, their comprehension and ability. I call it the emotional, intelligence, the essential skills of leadership. They have the ability to kind of demonstrate some of that EQ even early on, some of the simple things. And then the second half is that they have great self-awareness, because that is hard to coach when people don't have great self-awareness or don't want to dig in and get to the point where they can have great self-awareness.
Yeah. But ultimately that's hard to lead if you don't have that, that's the vulnerability and the trust that self-awareness creates.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So just curious, as the makeup of the kind of the work environment shifts, do these traits, these things show up differently for maybe Gen Xers than they do Gen Zers? What are you seeing?
Yeah, we have a training that we work through in some coaching called Leading Multi-Generational Teams. One of the biggest diversity in teams right now is the generational diversity. There are 5, now going on 6 different generations in the workforce. Okay. We have one client in the Midwest that's in the energy sector. Think about this town, right? It's the main focus of this town. There are 4, maybe 5 generations of the same family in the work environment, because you got grandmama that's, in the cafeteria, this and that. And you got the youngest one coming out of high school. It's on the line. Like, it's just part of what they do. Well, when you think about this, they all bring different traits to the table, and they're not wrong. It's that it's different than the previous generation. No matter what generation you're part of, you think your generation is right and best, and every other generation is wrong. I saw this quote one time where the facilitator put the quote up, and it said, "This next generation, they're entitled and don't work hard and this and that." And everybody started laughing like, "Yeah, man, that's so true." And then they popped up the author, and it was Socrates.
Yeah.
So this has been going on for a long time.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And so 100%, the environment and the culture in the world of which different generations were raised up, they bring different things because of that to the workforce. So this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. We were talking about we have to lead them the way they need to be led. We can't lead everybody the exact same way because they all bring different things to the table. And most leaders, no fault of their own, but they really only, if they haven't been equipped, trained, and developed, they really only lead 2 ways. They either lead the way they want to be led, or they want to lead the way they were led growing up.
Yep.
And neither one of those are right.
Yeah.
The right answer is we need to lead Sam the way that Sam needs to be led. We need to lead Chris the way, and that's different even if we're from the same generation. Mm-hmm. Sam, I threw that in there because I want to feel a little younger because I'm 52, but I want to jump down into your generation. So yes, it is different. And that's the challenge of a leader, is how do we get to the place where we truly understand that?
Well, you mentioned as well about leaders developing leaders, Chris. What is your plan of action when you're transitioning a leader, getting them to actually actively construct a development team for their own plan? For their own team.
Their own team. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are so many free resources out there. Okay. This is what I tell leaders and organizations all the time. Let's take this podcast for an example. Okay. There is no reason that every single person that has a team, whether it's one person, 30, 40, whatever it is, that they shouldn't take this podcast on a regular basis and say, "Hey, I want everybody to listen to this podcast, ride to or from work. And when we have our team meeting, I'm going to spend 10 minutes. I just want to know, what was your number one takeaway? What was your number one thought?" That is as simple as beginning to develop your team as you can get. And I want to encourage everybody that's listening to do that, because this is a resource that you can use and put in front of your team then to be able to start a development culture. That's how it starts. An example like that. The other way that I encourage leaders all the time, because they feel like they have to sit down and develop this major plan for this individual. And then if you have 6, 7 direct reports, maybe more, you're like, okay, I don't have time to do this. I encourage them to make the team member a part of the planning process. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I'm doing in December with my leadership team is I gave each one of them a day. Okay. And so I said, over the next 30 days, I want you guys to take a day, and all I want you to do is to get somewhere out of your office. I don't care where it is. It doesn't matter. But I want you to spend the day on what does next year look like for you? What areas do you want to grow personally and professionally? And my only requirement is that as you evaluate where you're at personally and professionally, bring those insights back to me on the business, but also personal. And I'm going to sit down with you and we're going to create a development plan next year. And I'm going to check in with you once a month, once a quarter. I'm going to hold you accountable to it. So we don't have to get to a point to where we feel like we're doing it all ourselves. Now, that's some basic stuff that we could do. As we go up in the levels of leadership and the executives and different succession planning, that's a little bit of a different story. And there's some things that we got in place. But most leaders, even with those two examples that I just gave right there, they can do both of those and their team will feel valued because there's a development plan in place. I read an article, this was 2-3 weeks ago, where in the top 3, you talk about, Michael, different generations and how they want to be led. I don't know about you guys, but when I was looking for a career, I was like, hey, how much does it pay? What's the time off? What are the benefits, right? Those are my reasons. In the top 3, in the youngest generation coming up, top 3, is they want to know what your development plan is for them, not a career path. So I tell leaders all the time, like, you want a differentiator in the market where talent is tough to come by. During the interview process, you better get to a point where you're laying out, this is how we are going to develop you.
Yeah.
And I'm not just on the IQ side, not just on the skill set side, because the IQ gets you the job. EQ keeps the job. Okay. The emotional intelligence and the leadership and the development of EQ and self-awareness is what keeps the job. So it's interesting because there's a shift going on. And as leaders and organizations, we better figure that out.
Wow.
Yeah. I know, Chris, for me, talking about some of this stuff, one thing that I need to really improve, one area I need to improve my leadership in is at home. And my kids would actually be the first people to tell you that. I've got 3 kids at home. So, I know your wife wrote and adapted the 5 levels into parenting with purpose. So how has applying those leadership principles at home shaped the way you think about leadership at work? And what can business leaders take away from that connection?
Yeah, we realized in being in John's world for so long, during COVID, my wife sat down. Now, listen, we had to do this, right? Once the kids got out of the house, we had to have enough credibility that we fully survived.
Yeah.
Because we do a lot of parenting seminars and workshops, and people go, oh, parenting experts. We're like, whoa, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
No, we are parenting survivors.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, we made it. John Maxwell always says, I love this. He says, listen, when you get a chance to have grandchildren, they are the reward from God for not killing your children. And that's true, right? That is very, very true. But what we realized was that we raised our children in a home with a common language around the 5 levels of leadership. Now, that wasn't what we were calling it while we were doing it, but we began to understand it really was about levels 2, 3, and 4 of influence on our children. And we're not saying being best friends with your children. We're saying connecting with them.
Yeah.
We're saying winning together, teaching them how to win, teaching them how to fish, right? Developing them. And now our kids are both out of the house, contributing to society with full-time jobs. And they will periodically call back and ask questions and mentor. And man, I remember this, like, hey, talk about that. And what I love about it so much is that, a lot of us know that or think that our children are not listening to us. We have this principle that we talk about around feedback and connecting with people. We call it the intent versus perception gap as leaders. So my daughter's got her first big girl job. She's the 23-year-old. And I hear her on the speakerphone the other night talking to her mom, and she drops this language. Well, listen, I know that was not his intent, but my perception was, I go, hold the phone. Like, I am interrupting this. Did you just use some leadership language around connecting? She's like, shut up, Dad. I'm like, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
So to your point, Michael, it really is principles that cross over personally and professionally. I want to address the way you asked it, though, because I know for me, and I probably know for most businessmen and women, what's happening is we're understanding leadership to some extent in our work world, but we don't bring it home versus, right, where, we lead really well at home and, we're showing up at work. No, it's like, man, my wife was coaching this executive female of a big time medical hospital. And she was telling her some things she's struggling with her son. And so my wife asked her, she said, hey, let me ask you a question. If he was on your leadership team at work, what would you do? And this lady, extremely competent, sharp lady, goes, oh my God, I never thought about it like that. Here's what I would do. And my wife goes, that's exactly what you should do. And so we really got to think about now, my wife and I joke around all the time. We say, the more impact that we have with parents around the world, I'm working myself out of a job because eventually these children are going to get to the corporate America and hopefully they're all incredible leaders.
Yeah.
But my challenge is, man, think about the leadership things that go on at work and how you lead people. Why aren't we doing that at home? Why are people in the work world, if we're thinking about balance why are they getting the best of me versus my family getting the best of me? Why am I not having weekly family meetings like I have weekly team meetings? Why do I not know that my daughter needs to be communicated to differently than my son does? Right? Like, so that was the aha. We get super passionate about it because, man, it is just, we've seen it completely impact and change parents from thinking about this leadership principle that we all kind of gravitate towards 9 to 5, and then we just throw it out the window when we get home.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it, Chris, because a lot of the a lot of the principles, 5 levels and everything we've talked about, it's really a focus on your internal capability, right? It's not just like performative and here's the 5 things to do, which so much of leadership at home and at work is caught and not taught.
That's so good.
People see it and they follow. It's not something you can just check off a box and just execute. So I think that's right. A lot of wisdom on just taking that mentality and mode that where you're great leadership at work, how can you pivot and use that at home?
Yeah.
Application.
Yeah.
So that's really good wisdom.
Awesome. Hey, Chris, this has been a truly inspiring conversation. Before we close, is there a piece of wisdom or a guiding principle that stayed with you throughout your leadership journey that you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah. Well, I want to add on to what Michael just said because I've been around John Maxwell for so long. We always are growth focused versus goal focused, right? We have a very infinite mindset around that. It's about the growth journey. And so I do want to add on another thought that I'll give you as I wrap up. Michael said is it does start with us. Like from day one, it's about your personal growth, no matter where you're at. What are your irreducible minimums every day to raise your level of competence in any area? Like I said, there's so much free content out there. What are you waiting on? Now, the younger generations, Michael, back to something you said earlier, what we're seeing is a lot of them have a ton of information and they don't get focused and then apply it, right? And so it starts with us because if people are the lid on the organization's ability to scale and to grow, okay, then the individual's responsibility is their own development. And so it starts with us. And so, John, that's just been something that, man, forever it's been, what are you doing? What are you reading? Who are you meeting with that's doing things faster than you are, bigger than you are? Where are you challenging yourself to grow? And then I'll close with these 2 little statements that I, as a leader, really have adapted just because of being around John and this culture and the environment, which is the first one is listen, learn, then lead. This is kind of a mantra that I think as leaders, if we would understand this, it's so important. We need to be listening to people. You heard me talk about curiosity earlier. Learn something from that and then lead the person, lead the situation, lead, making sure you have the right and enough context behind every situation because we judge ourselves by our intent behind everything, but we judge other people, and this is human nature, including myself, by the way they act.
Yeah.
Okay. We do it. And we never even take time as leaders to try to get behind what was the intent behind of X. And so I just have this thing that I say all the time. It's for me. I need to listen, learn, then lead.
Love that.
And when I do that, I find out that I'm able to connect and produce and develop people at a better pace than if I don't do that. And my closing thought is this. The reason I do all that is because everyone deserves to be led well.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah.
No matter where they're at in the organization, in our community, in our family, in our volunteer group, everyone deserves to be led well. And if we can get behind that, it was like Michael was saying earlier, at home first, then at work, right? If we can get behind that, man, the impact that we will have, because we're all in the people business, all of us, whatever entrepreneur is listening, whatever business, I don't care if it's widgets, we are in the people business because without the people, then we could not have that business. And I'm working a lot right now, as a lot of people are, right? AI and leadership. And I tell people all the time, it's a tool to help augment and automate things, but it'll never replace the way that we should be leading people and that human connection behind it. Is it going to change some things? Sure. But man, at the heart of what all of us do, there's people behind it, and everyone deserves to be led well.
I'm sure everybody listening will agree that this is such a positive, inspiring episode. So that's a wrap for today's episode of the Fast Slow Motion podcast. A massive thank you to Chris Goede for joining us and sharing his leadership insights. If you want to learn more about Chris and the work the Maxwell Leadership team is doing, we're going to include the links and the resources in the show notes. And as always, you can catch past episodes at fastslowmotion.com/podcast, or you can subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you have a question or a topic that you'd like us to cover, you can drop us a note at fastslowmotion.com/podcast feedback. And we'll see you again next time.